Okay, so there is a small question about what can possibly go into making a loot if it took 4 months to make the Dunker one. Okay, I'm going to answer this one live. So the basic idea is um, I was explaining before that if you have two objects, one at 28 degree and one at 29 degree Celsius, and you put your hand on it, you can feel the difference. Human eye are very tuned to look at differences and ratio. When you have a true side-by-side, digital versus print, every single little differences will be seen. If I show the print of Dunkirk in one projection, then we walk down the hall, we go in a different projection and we watch it again, you will not be able to pinpoint the differences if it's close enough. But if I'm doing a true side-by-side, you have to be as close as possible. And the problem is the way color is done in film is with dyes. You want more saturation, you add more dyes, and the light pass through, it gets darker. In digital, you want a pure red, you just slant the red laser there or whatever source you have, you get pure red. So the physical building of the image is different. That means that in film, there are certain colors, specifically the high saturated yellow and the low saturated cyan, that in digital cannot be represented, and vice versa. In digital, I can make pure saturated bright red, green, and blue that you cannot have in film. In digital, I can make a white point that it's cooler, the 65. In film, it's really difficult to pass the 55 unless you dim the image. So white text, white as in D55, it has to be dimmer than the maximum amount of light you put on the set. So while it takes 4 months, 3 months to build a lookup table for Dunkirk, submit. I'm submitting mine as well. It's simply because we want to make the side-by-side as close as possible, that when you see them, you look and say, this is the same image. But it's a very specific condition where you need to sustain a side-by-side. If you don't have to sustain a side-by-side, a lot of those limitations don't apply. That's why I can safely use resolved lookup table that is already provided to you and use it to build a photographic model. Does that lot represent a true photochemical process? No. Does represent a close enough look and feel of a Kodak stock? Yes. As long as you know the difference, you're fine. Nobody's in the theater. Go see it if you can. And try to look on the eye of, does the look and feel of this movie tell me that perhaps was shot in film? There are not, full emulation on it. But if you're looking for the look and feel, it's fine. And the other problem is, when is last time that you open, for example, The Godfather? When is last time you saw The Godfather? Did you see a print? Most likely no. Most of you were not even born when The Godfather was in the theater. What you see is a telecine transfer, physically a sensor. That telecine transfer most likely is not a telecine transfer of the print. It's a telecine transfer of the negative. The mapping of the linear light out of the sensor of the telecine to the actual final product is a combination of whatever the manufacturer decide the tonal curve is, whatever the manufacturer decide the primary, plus the skill of the colorist. He was lucky he had a print as a reference. Most likely he did not. He just makes something that looks good. Does that represent the original Godfather that was in the theater that year? No. Does it get the look and feel of the Godfather? Yes. So even today, I recently did a remastering of HDR for, Tarantino, Inglourious Bastards. with Ivan Lucas, that was the original colorist on the piece, with the same crew because it was still there. The Tarantino is still alive and the director of photography is still alive. And the starting point was, can we reach back in the archive and find the actual lookup table that mimicked the photochemical process used back in 2009? Luckily, we had it. So we want to start from as close as possible as the representation of the print as a starting point, and then from there we do HDR. Today, it's really impossible to do a representation of a stock film done in the 40s. You can't. The other problem you're having, in the 40s, they were using carbon arc projectors. They have a different spectral distribution, the xenon projector we have now. So even if you have the actual print from the 40s, you should watch that on a carbon arc projector because it will look different on a xenon projector. So there is a point where look and feel is close enough. Dunkirk was a special case because it has to sustain a true side-by-side. If you're home, you're doing something that look like film, like we just did, it's fine. There. What we did here, it's fine. It starts to feel and look like film. And keep in mind, this project, it came to me after it was shot. I had no idea, absolutely no idea what they did on the set. The director of photography told me, I shoot at exposure. The white balance is where I want it to be so I can trust the photography. And today with you, I'm building a look that was actually not even the one we used for this piece, but a random look, the mimic film that sets in the photography. Just to give you more of that. Shift F, thank you, get out of there. Let's make a gallery, let's make a power grade, let's call it TAC, as a TAC masterclass. And let's grab a still. Okay, so we have it. Let's get a completely different project, Barilla Carbonara short, that I did actually only a month ago. I think it's Emiliano was the DP. I'm sorry, Emiliano, if it was not you. Okay, this is already the colored one, but let's just break down completely the look for a second. And let's, is this one the one? Let me double check. I don't want to completely blow the color away. Yeah, I just did that. Control, this one, Control Z, there you are. Because I want to work on the one called no color. I want to keep one of the original to show you what ended up to be. Ooh, nice. Grab everything. Reset. So we got nothing. We got nothing. We got nothing. There we are. That's the original photography. And this is an ARRI photography. So we just reset a bunch of stuff. Don't ask me why the thumbnail still say there is color. They shouldn't. That's a bug. Shouldn't be any color here. There we are. Okay, so we just save a look that we did here. Principle of exposure. I'm going to apply on this piece. And the only difference is this Alexa. So we start from ARRI Alexa and ARRI Log C. And we can start to look at it, and we are already there. Like, those are two different pieces shot years apart by two different director of photography with completely different idea in mind. The look still works because the look you create is not based on a shot. It's not
Awesome.
based on, no, say again?
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the idea. You want to make an abstraction. The abstraction is, can I make a look where the director of photography in the set, as long as he hits his exposure, it will work. That's how movies like Joker are done. You create a look. Jill is an amazing colorist. Also an amazing human being, an amazing colorist. She create a look with the director of photography, the way I did Hustler, the way I did, the way Star Wars was done with me. Steve Yedlin create a look. The look is based on the photographic exposure on set. My joke is always that the photography of Star Wars was so easy that I really didn't have to do anything. I barely any color anything because the look was just done right. So even if you get a piece like this one that really come to me after a fact, I don't know, I never saw these people before. We talk and we say, which characteristic of look you want for this piece? How we can describe it. Once we describe it, then if we can put them down to actual physical concrete actions, and those actions are correlated with the photography, you're done. Let me see. Okay, before I go to the next slide, while we're talking about look, let's get to a different one. And let's get a different lookup table. That's not the lookup table I want. Timeline, this one. Come on, load. Come on, 17, load. Da-da-da. Okay, so a fellow colorist asked me ideas how to make a particular look that we can call ectachrome for a movie. Disclaimer, I did not do the movie. That particular colorist, I don't know if he was still on the project or not. And the second disclaimer is the look that I created here is not the final look of the movie. That went on a different direction, but this was more of an exercise of look building. So you see there is a bunch of stuff here. Let's take all of them off and do one at a time. The conversation start with the director of photography, in this case also with the colorist, and say what you would like to see. And the idea is we are in Vietnam. Yes, the Vietnam War. We have to imagine somebody going to do the scene reel with, with a small camera, reversal camera, with an Ektachrome of the time. And that's the look I'm looking for. Okay, so I started to talk with the director of photography friend of mine, Tim, and other people and say, when I talk about Ektachrome reversal look, what are we talking about? And the first thing we're talking about is photographic exposure. So we start from a Kodak, because why not? Did he just, okay. We start with a Kodak. Simple Kodak lock, again, is the one the result give us, because the idea also is, if I'm doing a look using special tools, and the look goes to somebody in China, for example, and they don't have the same tool, I'm doing a disservice to the client. So in using building blocks, I choose something that anybody in the world can use. And that's what I want to show you to you. Use building block that you already have. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars to buy a live grain. There's a resolve grain. It's fine. The second thing that we need to do, obviously, is it's ARRI. So we need to go from ARRI to senior log. Nothing more, nothing less. The third thing is a reversal stock or the time tend to be very hard. Hard contrast, hard shadows. So in the look, this was black, just turning the black down. And we changed slightly the way the contrast work, because I don't remember why we did this one. Don't ask me why. What did I do here? All right, I changed the contrast and then I raised back the pivot. The idea is the photographic spread of the original Kodak had too much detail on the black. So I want those details to be more crunchy, and at the same time reduce the photographic exposure, because if you think about reversal at the time, you don't have 8, 9 stop at the print. You only have 6, 7. So it's a harder contrast. In this case, from 18% gray, you have 1, 2.5 good stop below, 1, 2.5 stop above, 5 stop of exposure. That's the actual contrast of your film that we're trying to achieve. The next question, and for the next question, we go to an actual real image. Let me get something like this one. Oh, by the way, those images have nothing to do with the movie. This is Second World War, but those are images that I had just to test. I didn't have the shoot from the director, of course. Then I haven't even started the shoot. The second thing is the philosophical question you want to ask yourself or the director of photography. It's 1971. It's Vietnam War. There is the guy shooting really the piece of film. Do you want that reversal Ektachrome being as vibrant as if we are today in 1971? Or are we trying to pretend that this was shot in 1971 and then we are trying to make a film today restoring that material so it's more faded? That's a philosophical question. In making the look, you talk with your DP and you say, which is your preference? If I can identify which is the portion of the look you want, and I can put that in a concrete action, we'll do that. That's what we did. So here there is a slightly tint. You can see it gets slightly cooler. Ektachrome has a cool base. Kodachrome had a warm base. That's history. Go read your history. When you say Ektachrome, does it really mean a cooler base? In this case, the answer was yes. So we just cool down the base. If I go back to the, oh, no, not that one, this one. You can see how now it's the midtones is much greener. So it's a much cooler midpoints without even changing the exposure, just your base look. And the second thing is reducing the saturation. I don't remember where I did it. I don't even see it. There should be a saturation. Oh, anyway, color boost. I use the color boost tool. You can use whatever you want. It just give me a nice, you can use straight saturation, color boost, doesn't matter. It's just the way you decide to do it. Let's go to our reference frames like this one. Oh no, that was the one, this was better frame. So in this case, that it was just, I felt after I did these initial changes that the photography felt too bright, in this case, just for this particular piece that I have. So I put a little trim that bring the 18% gray down to give a much more dense starting point. Knowing that your highlights will clip faster, having a lower contrast, I arbitrarily decide to underexpose the print by about half a stop. Again, it's a choice. I motivate my choice mentally and I go with it. Grain, resolve grain, nothing much, nothing less. We just find a level of grain that feels coherent with the grain of the piece. There are a couple of websites in around, they show you photographies. And they are archived by when they were shot, which kind of film, which kind of subject. So me and the team, the director of photography here, we went through the same website, and I don't remember the name, and I apologize about that, and find Ektachrome 1960, 1970, and start to look at the images and say how much grind there was on the photography, knowing the film has more grain because of exposure time. And those stocks were very fast, so you have more grain. So we just find a level of grain that we find satisfactory for that. Shot deck, somebody's saying, probably that's where we went. Thank you, Alexander. The next thing is lenses. If you're thinking about a 16 millimeter cine reel done in 1970, the lens wasn't like a prime lens, was kind of a shitty. So I made a vignette correction that does two things. One, it simulates a fall off. And the other thing that you can see in the second node is to add blur, like if the lens itself has more out of focus because of the aberration of the lens. Again, find the element that define the look, build a tool that represent that element. This object, it's a camera shake. Let me see, these are the parameters. The basic idea is if you're shooting with a digital camera and you put the camera on a tripod, you have the camera absolutely locked. And if you have the chance to go to the Steve Yedlin website when he shows the building of his look, one of the things is film camera moves. Even if it's on a tripod, there is a micro movement that keep happening regardless. So that is one of the things where you can do to taste, or if you have real film, you can match real film. Like Steve Yedlin did a mathematical model for real film. I don't have to because we're not matching real film per se. We're matching an idealized film. So if I go now on a single shot, I loop it and I try to make this one, try to make this one big. We go down on the pixel level. I hope you guys can see it. You can see the effect of the micro movement. And because I'm not using any plugin, I'm using just Resolve tool, those are native tools and they're really, really goddamn fast. So even my machine that doesn't have gigantic amount of cards can still hold that. Last but not least, film has halation. What halation is, we're gonna do just a brief digression on the halation. Halation. There are two different halation that happen in film. Let me restart for a second. White on white never works. This is auto scale, but just to give you an idea, this is the substrate, like literally the transparent film. You have blue first, a layer of that is sensitive to blue, a gel layer, the silver allied layer, another layer that is sensitive to green. And, I don't want to go into, well, it's cyan, magenta, whatever, because it's positive, negative. Just have red, green, and blue. It's fine. For the discussion we want to do, let's not lose ourselves in detail. The way they build Kodak and Fuji and everybody build the film is to have the red layer on top. One of the most important thing in representing an image is the skin tone. Our eye see reds really, really clearly. If the skin tone is not right, it's the first thing that we perceive as wrong. Then green, there's a lot of green around. Blue, we have deficiency in seeing blue. So having the layer of blue under the other one make for a lousier image in the blue channel, but our eyes still will not see the difference, so why not? And what happened is, imagine that you have a ray of light hitting here. What happened is the light, because they're semi-transparent layer, pass through, scatter, and bounce. So imagine a red, the pass through, scatter, hit the back of the actual support here, and bounce back. It will re-expose slightly the red. And the more intensity of the light you have, the more bouncing you have, so the red tend to spread. The green, being the second layer, will spread less. There is also a secondary spread here, and the blue almost doesn't spread. Okay, that is if we assume the lens are perfect, everything's perfect. That's just what happened on the film itself. What it means that if you have an area of high contrast, you see, for example, a light, you see a slightly orange glow. Oh, nope. You have a slightly orange glow. Why am I choosing white? Orange. want orange. Thank you. A slight oral glow, assuming that this is white and this is black. That extend and basically pollute slightly the black. The second elation you get is actually in develop. If you have a high contrast image, more so in photography, less in film, because film run and the chemistry runs. You have the chemistry that, for example, is depleted doing this white, and it tend to be less depleted later, and you create here some lobes. Somebody explained this to me once, and I still don't understand exactly how it works, but I know it's a elation that you get in develop versus an elation that you get in exposure. So we have few choices. Do we want to have a real photographic elation? If we can. If we cannot, what's the best way we can do? So the way I build an elation in Resolve, that is the simplest way you can do it, is in this way. Let me delete this one entirely. It's actually doing almost nothing on this shot. Yeah, why not? Let me see if I can find a shot where it's visible, because I tweak it, tune it down, tune it up.
And Walter, this is on the timeline level?
Yes, because it's still part of the look. Again,
right.
This is still part of the generic look. I just hide that in a compound node. Again, I want to try to hide the complexity. The whole compound node is the elation, and it's doing nothing because it's freaking deselected. That's why. That's why I was doing nothing.
Got it. So the compound node hides the halation, and then that's the last part of the, so yeah. People are following. Yep.
Okay, so can I just disable all of it? So you can see the effect on this particular frame. The basic idea is the elation work best in linear light, the method in Resolve. So the first thing we want to do is not Lightbox, go from Alexa, this Alexa material, to Alexa linear light. And the last thing we want to do is go from linear light back to log C, similar to what we did when we were showing the stop changes. We go in linear light, we do what we need to do, we get out of linear light. The second thing we have to do is just choosing the highlights. So this tool here is basically a tool that allows me to, I can't see it really well, but it's basically, you know what, I'm going to redo everything with you right now. So instead of trying to show you what I did, let's redo it together. Those two nodes, simply, they should just undo each other, and they don't, because I don't know why. Oh, because this is an add node. Okay, right. This branch is basically creating the problem. Okay. So those two just cancel each other. You go in linear light, you do what you have to do, you get out of linear light. Here, this is a layer mixer, not a parallel node, compositing mode to add. Because if you think about it, when you re-expose the edges, you add back light to the edges itself. Selection, you only want to select the extremely highlights. Simplest ways to do it is just do this. Come on, do this. Jesus, that's twitchy. There you are. Go down. There we are. So I'm just selecting the extreme highlights of an image, okay? Nothing more, nothing less. The next thing you do, you basically say, when the light is above a certain value, it starts to spread. That's what you're telling the result to do. The second thing is, and let's do this one slightly aggressive, 0.65. I don't want this one ganged. 0.60, why not? And 0.55. The next one is the spread. Like we were saying, the spread has more spread in the red because it bounced more and it's farther away from the baking, from the anti-baking layer, and less on the green, less on the blue. That's pretty much what we are doing with this one. And being this one an add, it just add that back to the image. And then you can just twist this one as much as you want it. You can also, tint it a little bit if you want it. You can spread more or less. You can change the attack of it, how many highlights take part in. There's not many highlights here, so there we are. As you can see, that is the minimum amount of tool necessary to create an elation. Now, does that represent true elation mathematically? No. Does it represent the look and feel, and that's what you're trying to get? Yes. And again, I use a shot, but you can do this one literally with a grayscale and it's fine because it will work on the photography itself. I mean, you can see here, it's doing it on this thing. The color is a bit yucky. I'm probably not getting the right color, but no time for refinement. We'll do that later if the client likes it. If you spend too much time to do something before you show it to the client, you're wasting time. The client may not even like where you are. Do a block, show it to the client. Do we like it? Move to the next thing. So this one was to build a look for this particular project. And then I was lucky enough to get a couple of test frames. Where's this one? Yeah. Like I say, this is not what we end up to do for the actual production. I don't need those two guys. This is just test frame that he sent me. And the idea is once you start to look at the test frame, the question is, does this look and feel like Vietnam 1971? Now that they are actually in the right costume and they are in the right forest, the emulation works. The only thing we added was more grain. We put back some more color because we desaturate too much. The image testing I had were not representative of the photography. So you build a look based on the principle of photography. You start to have tests. You modify the look slightly if necessary. And that's it. Look at the elation here. It's just beautiful. Now, like I say, I didn't do this movie. They choose a different strategy. I'm just using this one to show you how to build the look. And the next thing that happened, a friend of mine say, hey, can you show me the same look on images that I have? Sure. He sent me a bunch of images. I applied the same look. We did a very global trim. Where is the look? Ta-da. We did a very global trim to keep it, in this case, warmer. So the saturation and tint has a more Control D, a warmer tone. FZ. And again, those were shot with a completely different camera, with a completely different thing in mind, but because the photographic exposure on the set, the spread of the stop are very similar, you can safely attach the same look and it will work. So don't make 100 nodes on one shot. Build a look for a photography. If the photographic exposure is similar, the look works. And it's much more coherent and consistent for your entire movie. Where are we? 1 hour and 42. I'm slightly behind. Yeah, I'm slightly behind.
That was very informative, though. I think I love the concept of kind of pairing the look build around the photography because it really does emphasize what the DP does. And I think for somebody who comes from a DP background, having colorists who work that way,
yep,
it makes me, more relaxed, because I know that they're going to bring out what I did on set.
That's exactly awesome. The concept is, let's make the Joker look. No, you don't. You're trying to push and pull until something looks similar visually, but right. You're not actually doing what director of photography is expecting. Joker was done building the look first based on what the director of photography exposure on set would be, and then the director of photography put the light ratio coherent with the actual look. For Hustler, we build the look. The DP knew that he has, in that case, a DXL2 Panavision. So it's a red camera, basically.
Sure.
It's a very fancy red camera. We decide to expose the set at 800. He never looked at the DIT monitor. He was going on the set, light at 800, it's done. Right. The DIT was just correcting very lightly if there was a mismatch in white balance, or perhaps, you didn't hit the mark, so the subject is slightly off. That's what the DIT was doing. It came to me and it's properly exposed. And you don't have to go back and try to chase the photography. One of the most common errors the DIT do is don't talk with your director of photography. If the director of photography underexposed the set one stop, the question you DIT have to ask yourself first, is that intentional? If you just correct it, now the director of photography go back, see the daily, say, shit, I'm still too bright. I'm bringing it down. And you are correcting it again. What the fuck are you doing?
Right. And then, there's a fight eventually.
I actually witnessed some of those, and they're ugly. In your best intention to make the daily look good, you may do a disservice to the photography.
Right.
That the photography, the director of photography know how to use a light meter. I'm assuming they do. Camera manufacturer try to make the camera that if you hit the target, the image is very coherent and consistent. So if you are in a photographic setup with two people talking and the lights are set and the camera sets, theoretically, you need one trim and you're done.
Right.
Photographic exposure, look the merit of the photographic exposure, a little trim to compensate for whatever variation the camera have, you're done.
Someone was asking what was in that fourth node that you just showed us.
Here, those two that I bring together. Mm-hmm. If it's this one, it's because vignette has an inside-outside. So the first node only take care of how much loss of light I want. The second node is how much out of focus I want in the outside to mimic a cheaper lens.
Got it.
And you can do whatever you want. The strategy I used is I don't blur the red, so if a character goes on the side of the screen, the skin tone still looks good.
I think they were talking about too the in the compound node for the halation setup, the fourth node.
Oh, okay.
Inside that guy. Yeah, that one.
This one is just because I decided to artistically add some color.
I got it.
The way I did it before with only two nodes, one for the selection, one for the spread, that is the minimum amount of tool you're doing. The rest was to take
finesse. Yeah.
Finesse. It's like, I want to arbitrarily add more yellow glow to the highlights just because, not because it's useful, if you wish.
Right.
Now, let's go back and let's do that again. Let's grab this look. This is at the group level, doesn't really matter. Timeline group, we'll go that in detail later. Let's go back to our Ida. I think it's Sicilian. If some Sicilian is connected, please let me know if it's correct. Reset everything. I'm at the group level. I'm adding this one. Question is which camera I'm using. I'm using Sony. Hey, Sony Rex09 Cinefilm log. Boom, the look is there. And every single decision we took in building that look is here. And I build the look regardless of what I'm doing, because the look represent, let's say, an exposure and a look like Ektachrome, where we have this, and these elements that define the look. And it doesn't matter if I'm doing it for World War II piece, for Vietnam War, or in this case, for a comedy piece. Then you can modify the look. For example, in this particular case, it's a comedy. It seems very contrasty. So perhaps contrast shouldn't be that much in the look specific for this particular piece. Perhaps the saturation should be nil. Let's reset it because we shouldn't need saturation. What else I put here? I don't remember. Doesn't match. Let's see. Reset, no color correction there. What else? The grain. Perhaps the grain is too much because it's a modern piece, so it's supposed to be probably closer to, I don't know, a new vision stock. So let's start from a 35 millimeter base. So the look that was tailored for a specific movie now has been retailored for this particular photography. Done. And again, I did not do that on a shot, on a principle. Now, what all of this mean when we go down to actually color correct a full piece? Because all of this preparation that we did in the last 3 hours is to make your work easy. So we go back to drawing board. We can make more layer. And fine. So I want to build a look for as much as possible encompass the entire photography of the movie. There are always exceptions, but before starting to talk about the exception, talk about the method. Look, a look for the whole movie. That goes on top of everything. The general idea is if the director of photography hit the exposure and you put the look, your job is done. You don't have to do any bloody else. The Star Wars The Last Jedi, at one point there is a shot of Rey going into the Snook layer, the red throne room. She get thrown on the floor, she look up. The shot come on me. There is Steve Yedlin look on top of it. And I'm looking at Steve and say, what you would like to see. A point of red. Click. Color correction for that shot, done. Because the look was built on the photographic exposure. He nailed the photographic exposure. There was no shift camera, nothing weird going on in terms of the sun went off, a cloud came in. Done. That's how you color a long movie. You make a look that is strong, and then you're done. Next thing you do. The script itself is divided in scene. The director of photography build the set and the light together with director and set designer based on scenes, script scenes. The editor put together them mostly as scenes. So the first thing I do in approaching a long form TV or even a short is dividing in scenes. I use the group method. In Resolve, you can use whatever method your color corrector has, but basically divided in the same scene. Scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. And I will treat that as a sub look for the scene. I am expecting that if there are two people talking, the director of photography expose the subject. We are told in a story, the story is told by subjects, usually a person. The person usually hit a mark, and the exposure on the person on that mark is what intended. So I want to have a scene that is coherent, and most likely director of photography already did that for you. If you do a bunch of color on shot 1 and then you go to shot 2, you're not expected to do much different because the light was the same. Unless you are doing a car chase and it's 3 days into the shoot and the sun went in and off, that's where you need to color correct. Now, how you color correct the scene? Well, the scene is a bunch of shots. Watch the movie from beginning to end, possibly with audio, read the script, talk with the director of photography, understand who is the hero of the story. In color correcting a scene, which color? This one is fine. I found the hero. It's a shot usually a mid close-up of a person or the major shot of the location or whatever, the car. Usually it's a person because the person tells the story. And I'm looking at that and say, is the scene where we want it? Do we want the scene differently? After I color correct the scene using the hero, the next job is to balancing, just balancing, don't do anything stupid, all the other shot to that. And chances are that your balance is very minimal because you already took care of the majority of your decision with the movie and the scene. Now, which tool I use? Um, I use offsets, also printer lights, mathematically is the same. Or if you use CDL, will be exactly the offsets. In Resolve, they're called offsets, RGB offsets. Because an offset in a logarithmic space represent almost correctly mathematically exposure change and white balance change in the set. So I'm using a tool as if I'm changing the light on the set. Therefore, I'm not screwing the photography. The common the common thing that people do, let's not call it error because I know there are very successful colorists that do that. Imagine that you're doing something different. You're using gamma as a first tool. So you did a gamma change. Now you're changing the relationship between the midtone and the highlights, the midtone and the lowlights, and this color that you just changed with your white, and this one didn't follow. So the next thing you do after you did the gamma, you put your hand on the other two balls, and guess what? You're trying to rebuild the same photography. So to me, changing the gamma on a logarithmic image is distorting the photography. In balancing together the shots, I only allow myself offset, printer lights, whatever you want to call it, and contrast defined as just gain. If, for example, one lens is softer than the other lens, I need to change the contrast, obviously. Or if you find, the sun was more in here, less in there, I need to do that. Um, okay. So the basic idea is for 100 years, the only tool available in printing was a look defined by the negative and positive, negative and print, and printer lights literally offset in light, real light to re-expose the positive. You should be able to bring a movie in the ballpark, 90% where it should be, using literally printer light offsets and perhaps a bit of gain, and that's it. If the photography it is inconsistent because sun, because the photographic exposure went off, that's when you have to color correct. But here we are talking about how we can go from I have 3,000 shot to color to a pass that I can actually see and ship it in the minimum amount of manipulation possible in the most elegant way. Making a global look for the movie remove complexity because the look can be really complex, but once you establish it, it's done. Color correct a scene will remove the complexity of the scene. Let's say that you got a scene that you want to be really contrasty, black and white, whatever. The scene become black and white, and then you just match the shots. After you match the shots, then you do the trim part. Trim part is, okay, bring down this corner. The floor is too hot. I want a bit more sky. She went slightly in the dark, bring her out. But at this point, this is the point where you want to play. This is the point you want to reach as fast as possible, and you want to play for your client as soon as possible. Because if the scene is not even in the bloody ballpark, making 20 window on a shot is a waste of fucking time. It's great that the teacher in YouTube told you make all these windows if the shot is not even balanced. If the director of photography didn't tell you, I like it, you are wasting your time. There are plenty of time in my career where I did a first pass. This is called a first pass. I thought it was great. And the director of photography told me in a very elegant way that it's crap. You have to swallow your pride and realize that you did not match the intended artistic vision of the piece. It doesn't matter if you match Mad Max. If he wants a comedy, you are off the mark by a lot. Another little break. Why not?
I think that's a good, I mean, really, I know back to our interview, you talked a little bit about this client, relationship.
Yeah.
And kind of how that's really the focal point for a colorist, not necessarily your technical ability to create, turn one image into something else. It's really not about that in the practical sense. When you're working, it's really about taking that image and making it what it was designed to be, not trying to turn it into something else.
Yeah, you need to know how to make something else, because in the building of the look, you need these tools.
Mm-hmm.
But once the look is built, like you say, we need to find the photography first.
Mm-hmm.
Then if we need to change it, the director of photography will tell you to change it.
Right.
Of course, I need to know how to make whatever, the teal and orange. I hate the teal and orange. Don't ask me to do it. I hate it. But if I have to do it, I'll do a bit of research, and try to understand which are the element of a teal and orange that appeal my client. How can I elegantly make a look that incorporate those elements? How that look fits in the photography on the set, and it's done. And I forget about it. Now, you may have movies that have more than one look. Bliss now in Amazon Prime, if you want to stream it, we had a conscious decision at the beginning, reading the script, talking with the director, with the photography. There are two major words, like Matrix, there are two major words that it may not be possible to achieve that with a single look. Therefore, the look is split in two, and all the scene that belong to the bliss world will take at the scene level, well, at the group level, the bliss look, and every single scene that has the ugly world look, as we call it will get the ugly world look. But within the subset of the movie world, each one has its own element coherently with the photography.
So somebody had asked in the Q&A that you had mentioned using a film look LUT on Hustlers, and they asked, was that project graded in HDR? And if so, how did you approach that during the post-production?
I will do the HDR for you. I promise.
Got it. Fantastic.
Yeah, we're almost done with a bunch of theory. Let me see. Oh, in the creation of the look, the other thing that it's important is try to understand which part of the look can be given on set. Because that's the other challenge is, of course, the director of photography will expose the set with a light meter. I'm not expecting no more nor less. But when you create a daily, the editor need to see something that is kind of representing the look. Mm-hmm. The visual effect company need to see something that represent the look. So you want to try to find the essence of what you're trying to do, and all the elements that can be replicated with a lookup table, and give that to the daily, and give that to the people in post-production for the VFX. The studio that pay the money for all of us to work need to see something. So the idea is, if you cannot have a full resolve on set, and sometimes it's not possible, or they have other systems, at least create a lot that represent the bulk of the look that you're trying to do. For example, for Bliss, we had two main LUTs, one for the ugly world, one for the Bliss world. We were able to actually, in our daily system, Company 3, add in grain. So the ugly world got a buttload of grain, and the Bliss world was pristine, because that's part of the look. Sure. So we were able to introduce a couple of the elements of the final look, let's say about 89%. For Hustler was a single LUT with grain. So the daily were actually pretty close to the final idea. Same for the other that I mentioned, Nobody, same idea. We were able
Right.
to define the look
So
mostly
you
with a single lot and some grain.
so you were able to get to that trim phase really fast.
Of course,
Right.
everybody already saw the right exposure. Everybody already
Mm,
saw the bulk of the look. When it comes to me, yes, I have the CDL from the set, and that is more of a dialogue. For me, the CDL is a dialogue where the director of photography want to go with the scene. Then I took
mhm,
away the CDL. I keep the still so I know where they went for the dailies. And then I sit back and using very simple offsets that represent photographic exposure in a logarithmic environment,
mhm.
just simply match the scene together and they fall in place. The thing is that because I'm not starting to distort the photography using lift gamma gain and this an HDR tool and the
Right.
web and whatever, find the original photography first. See if the
Mhm.
director of photography they spend hour on the set to do that photography likes it. Then from there we go to the next step.
That's really good. Somebody asked real quick why you use the linear color space for the halation transform. Is that a resolve specific thing?
I missed.
Linear light, the
Oh,
linear light for
no, it's just that
halation.
it's just because it's much easier to define the very top highlights
Hmm.
in linear light.
Got it.
Um, Let me share again, and just so I can just draw. It's easier if I show you a drawing of it. Um, yes, so it, linear light, as we were saying, it's a form of doubling the light every stop that you get. In a logarithmic environment, why I'm not typing? Because this is on. Control Z. Control Z. Control Z. Okay, I'm going to type here. So in a logarithmic environment, if you have a file that goes from 0 to 100%, whatever is the number, 1024 in 10-bit, the stops are uniformly distributed. That means that instead of being each stop double, the distance in bits between one stop and the other, it's equivalent. It's
Hmm.
equidistant.
Right.
Now, it's very difficult to select just this portion or perhaps just this portion to the elation. So if you go back in linear light, this curve is transformed to this.
Mm,
So it's much easier. This top gets spread.
right.
It's much easier to select just the extreme highlights.
Mhm.
If you don't have in your color corrector those tools, it doesn't matter. Try to select just the top highlights.
Got it.
Just the top. Blur that, add it back to your image, should be enough.
Um,
Now, I know, a lot of company and probably even Blackmagic is working on making a tool. I saw some of them from a different company. I see some plugins. I see how Steve Yedlin does it. Um, this is the simplest thing you can do today without having those tools. If tomorrow you get a tool and the tool satisfies your look and feel, please use it. What I'm trying to show here today is I don't have the tool. What I can do? Well, that's what you can do with Resolve today. And in Baselight or Luster or ColorFront or whatever tool you have, you can do similar thing. Select just the specular highlights, slightly blur with more ray for the red, less for the green, almost time
mhm.
for the blue. Add it back on top. It gets you a look and feel that it's good enough.
Fantastic. Oh, just as a touch point, we did that poll earlier. We have 462 members in the group right now or in the live stream.
Yep.
Of those, 73% have backgrounds as colorists.
Mhm.
26%, so 112 people are cinematographers.
Yep.
26% are editors, and 17% are other. So
Nice. Yeah, I'm really glad that there are, director of photography here, because one thing I want to tell to all of you is we are your friends. We are not your enemy. I know that some of the things in the internet that get teach to young colorists seems to be the enemy. I'm trying to tell everybody we are trying to really respect your photography. That's what I do every day. Before doing anything else, I want your photography to shine. And if I don't have to do anything, I will not do anything. I'm not going to twist my button just because I can.
Okay, great. So I think we're ready to transition into this third phase.
Okay. Let me see. Blah, 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 blah. I did that one. Okay. So now, practically speaking, and I need to share the screen because I do that all the time. Practically speaking, the next challenge we have is to define what is the part of the look that goes to everything, what define the part that goes to the scene, what the part that goes to the shot, what the trimming, and in Resolve specifically, but you can do this on in any platform you want, where we put those corrections to be effective. So let's for a second just reset this one and let's get to have a normal look. Yeah, why not? This doesn't matter. Okay, this is actually the original look of the piece. That's what we actually used. It was based on Alexa lookup table, the old one. This is the K1S1, the original one. This one is the one that come from the hardware side now, and the difference is just, as you can see in the black, they get a little bit denser. That's, they did a change, whatever. There is an extra contrast that we added. There is the color space transformation from Sony to Alexa. There is the grain. And this one, it's just a global desaturation that we decide to put. So that is our look that with the director of photography, we started with. It really doesn't matter what you do. That's a look. The problem is now in Resolve, how we can elegantly divide what you do on the scene to what you do on a shot to what you do on a trimming to the client will ask you, can I see this shot brighter? And you already did a bunch of keys and you break them, or the whole scene need to be warmer. I use a method that was taught to me by Florian Uzzi, that is a colorist from Germany. I think he worked in Munich for Harry. When we were doing together Independence Day, he was the leading colorist. He did the first pass of color with Marcus Further, director of photography. I was assisting, and then he went back to Germany. I grabbed that, and I just did everything else after that. Collaboration is important. Even if you think you are the best colorist in the world, if you cannot collaborate with somebody else, people will not want to work with you. Haha, magic. So I implement a fixed node structure. It means every shot, regardless of what I have to do the shot, will have the same structure because it allows me to define at the beginning of the project where things are, how I use the node for, reduce the complexity, increase the speed, and most important, allow me to do global trims for camera angle, for shots, for scenes. After the first pass of color for Green Book, me and the director of photography, we were too dark. We didn't realize it. We just liked it. The director come in and say, I want everything brighter because you guys, I can't see Marshall in the back of the car. Where do you put that? How do you do that? If you do it at level 1, you screw everything. If you do it on the group, maybe, sorry, on the look, it may be too much. It may be per scene. We didn't know that at the beginning. So let's talk about the node structure that I use. LS. First two nodes they're used to achieve basic balance, basic contrast, especially the first one, just RGB offset, don't use it for anything else. Contrast if you need to match two lenses, that's it. Second node, I usually use it for dynamics, as if somebody's inside a bar, is moving outside, the camera is following. the inside the bar is slightly underexposed, the outside of the bar is overexposed. I need to balance that. I need to chase that. Of course, I help the director of photography because that transition can be 6, 7 stop of difference in terms of light. They do what they can on the set, but they're there to capture the action. That's when you need to do a dynamic. The other thing I use this one for is noise reducer. I use Resolve Noise Reducer. It's perfectly fine. If you want to use Neat Video or whatever else, please do. I find the noise reducer Resolve being as effective as I need it to be. So between the base and noise reducer, you should be able to bring a shot pretty much where you can play and you're done. Then I have the first stack on the top. Let me just put some number. Right, I'm writing them in Italian. Left side of screen, center side of screen, right side of screen. Those nodes are reserved usually for the main character, the main subject of the scene, if they are respectively on the left, center, or right. In this particular shot, if I have to put a window on the main character, she is mostly on the right side, I will put it here. If I have to put a shot on the other side, I tend to put it on the other side. So what it means that if I reopen this particular node, 2 years from now, I know exactly that that particular node that I put there is for the main character, right side of the screen. Then, Control Z. Add node, one more. Now I'll do a slight variation of, if you guys saw my low post one, I'm doing today a slight variation just because Resolve 17 introduced a tool and I'm starting to liking the tool to solve very specific thing. So log. Now this log doesn't mean log file. It means literally the logarithmic control of Resolve. And I use this one if I have to do a very small trim on the black, a very small trim on the white of the image, leaving the bulk of the color space where it is. And in Resolve, now you have those HDR tools. Again, if I have to do very small variation of specular highlights and black, very useful in HDR where you see those differences much more. So this is, you can actually now call it log/HDR tool, not necessarily HDR as in making HDR product, is using the HDR Resolve tools. Literally just very highlights, very small lowlights. The next one, sky. 90% of the time, when we are outside, the director of photography will ask you to deal with the sky. So I made a node because it happened a lot of time. The sky node also can be used for ceiling, roof. If you are indoor, sometimes you have a bounce of light on the top and you want to tame it down. Therefore, you want to have something that works there. If you are inside, you don't have a sky, I can repurpose the same node for a roof. Why not? This one, it's a new one. I actually start to like the color warper. So this is either, how do they call it? Sorry, curves. Either curves or the warper. This is to solve specific issue. You have two shots, they're outdoor. One has foliage that is slightly warmer than the other one. You want to just correct the foliage. That will help you. I found the color warper to be an elegant way to use that. Or you can use, simple classic curves. I hope the machine is not crashing, is not answering my request. Thank you. So, simple hue versus hue versus sat, the usual secondary. It's literally a secondary correction. Will I use this secondary correction for a skin tone correction? Never. Because when I do my base correction, I do the base correction to make the main subject of the shot to be properly balanced at the color that I want it. Therefore, the skin of the actress in this shot will be resolved at the very first stage. I'm sorry, if you're balancing for a white balance and your skin of your actress is off, what the hell are we doing? Is the shot about the background? No. If the background is slightly off, once you play, you look at the subject. The subject has to be right from the beginning. If I do a secondary, will be on the background because key can be difficult. And if I have to change the color of the leaf a bit, so be it. But if the color of the main actor is not right, what the hell? Guys, what the hell? This brings me to what I call skin. Here, like I say, it's not a secondary on the skin. It's something that often, especially in TV, they ask you to do. Makeup sometimes is not great. Actress may have a little wrinkle or there is a spot on this, a blemish. That particular node is reserved to help usually leading actor and actresses to get a little bit more clean skin. Not to do the color of the skin, just to help them in medium and medium close-up and close-ups. One more corrector. Let's schlamp this one here. 2, 3, 4, 5. And we add a parallel node, parallel mixer. We add one input. The bottom 5 nodes are whatever the director of photography, the director, your cousin, you want to do. Brighten this object, darken that corner, you know, whatever happened aside from all the special cases that we already defined. Now, certain colorists make less serial nodes and more parallel nodes. That's up to you. That's absolutely up to you. The idea is you want to at least have a few parallel nodes. So if you pull a key here, and you can still pull a key there and be cleaned. If you do something on these shots, and then you do something on all the other nodes, and then you want to change the first shot again, it can be challenging because you break things. Another thing that those nodes are used for, sometimes I have mattes. I don't have it in this case, but you know, it happened. It's a VFX, the compositing, they give you a matte. It's very easy to just use a pre-made node and add it there. Why not? Now, if the first 2 nodes represent the sheer balance and RGB balance, I don't want to call it white balance, but RGB balance to bring the subject in the spotlight, this second block will be all your trims for the specific shot.
Walter, we have an email question that came in from Toby Tompkins. Maybe it's a good time now to discuss. It's about your node structure. Toby writes, "Hi, Walter. I'm a big fan, longtime admirer of your work. I have a question about your node tree. Why do you have sections of parallel nodes in serial formation, i.e., groups of parallel and serial, as opposed to just having more parallel nodes? It seems like if you make changes upstream to some of these, it would affect your downstream isolation. So why not have more in parallel with a clean input for more of these nodes?"
It's just a preference. Like I got used to, I can use is a bad word. The idea is I have 3 clean chants to make what I need to do. And most of the time, that's enough. Parallel node can be tricky. Let me show you an example. Let's say that, where is the saturation button? I'm saturating this one to 0. And before I do that, let's do a small trim here. So I'm going to make this one slightly warmer, okay? And then somebody come in and say, well, I want to see a black and white. If you now make black and white, the problem is the parallel node is compounded with the black and white. And you can see this is not black and white. So
sepia.
The advantage of the parallel node is to be able to get clean keys from a single source. The disadvantage, and sometimes can be used, is that two parallel node correction add to each other. So as long as you know the limitation, there is no reason why you should not do 10 parallel nodes. This is more of, I got used to it. It's a preference. That's it. Find a preference that suits your need. And for example, if I'm doing commercial, some of the trim node that we will show here, they're probably useless because commercial tend to have a lot of little changes to a single shot. So perhaps I have 4 or 5 parallel branches, each one with only 2 or 3 nodes, because I know that I need more detail-oriented changes for a single shot. Now, let me just go keep labeling this guy. The shot trim, we'll discuss that in a moment. OFX, this is when you need to add a specific effect on your shot. And as you can see, if this represents everything you do to the shot, that is above it. It's more like a look for that shot. For example, a shot needs more grain, or for example, you need to put a lens flare, or there is a pixel you need to fix, or what else? Oh, you want to do a tilt and shift lens because you need a special effect, or you're doing a look of a nightmare, and that particular 3-4 shots need a special treatment. OFX, that's what it is, and it's basically whatever resolver effects you can get that can help you to get there. This one is a vignette. Lots, again, that comes with experience. A lot of people like the idea of a soft vignette to close the action. And it's also a trick you can use if you need something really, really dark. Your instinct is to darken everything. The shot look dark, but you don't see the action, and it look mushy. So one thing you can do to lower the average light that hit your eye as an observer is close the sides so you can afford to leave the center portion of the action slightly more snappier, but the average the image still feel dark. The second one is still a vignette. It's inside, outside. What happened is I do a vignette, let's make one very simple just for the sake of exercise. So I use resolve, I do this one and inverse because I just want to do the outside, and I hit it with a hammer. Now the shot feels dark. The problem is that I cannot go to the base and reopen it. Remember, there could be a bunch of keys here, you will break them. What I can do is connect those two guys together so I get exactly the same key, and I don't know why Resolve does not refresh the icon. And now I'm working literally on the inside. This is just to help you not to break things that you may already done. Okay, so color, reset, and keep, great, okay, perfect. This one, it's one of the first trim, this is the angle trim. This is the shot trim, this is the angle trim, this is the scene trim. And we'll see all of that in a moment. Scene trim, this is the director of photography trim. And this is the Hail Mary pass. And with this one in a moment, how it works. So let's grab everything. I'm saving quickly a memory on my keyboard and schlamp it on everything. So everybody has exactly the same node tree. There is no mystery. It's a fixed node tree structure. The second thing I did, and I always do, like I said before, I group the scene based on the script and how the story is told. In this case, you have a scene with her arriving, you have meeting her uncle, you have a scene at the garden, first night, breakfast, second night, leaving. This one is a one for all the logo text, whatever, where perhaps the look does not apply. You have a small scene with it's a bandage door, and this door I never used. I don't know why it's there. So let's go to the garden for a moment because it's outdoor. It's my favorite, and she looks great. So we already put the look on everything. Right, the result doesn't let me to go to the timeline. There you are. Look on everything. That solved the majority of the problem of our photography. The next thing you want to do is to choose the hero shot. In this case, she is the hero of the whole piece. I'm getting a close medium shot where I want her to look good. And I asked the director of photography, what you want to see here? What the scene is about? And the director of photography will tell you they meet each other. It's a very good moment. It's a very good feeling. It's almost a romantic moment that they meet each other after a long time. I want the scene to be slightly more poppy, slightly more saturated, perhaps warm. So at the scene trim level, now that the shot is already balanced without doing nothing, I may try to give a little bit of those characteristics. So perhaps I'm gonna do something more extreme than what I would like so you can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, there we are. This is the look. Director say, I like it. I haven't touched anything else, and I say ripple to the select group. So the scene is already defined as a group. I did the scene trim, I put it on the group, I can hit play. The entire scene, perhaps without looping, the entire scene got the look of the scene as I was explaining right here. There we are.
I
Got the
think you
scene.
just I think you just invalidated any YouTube video on copy and pasting nodes. So thank you.
Yeah, there is that. Okay, so here, like I was showing before, you did the look, you choose the hero shot. The hero shot was already balanced. If it's not, do the minimal adjustment to balance it. I did the scene look, boom, propagate the scene look, I'm done. The next thing I have to do is start to look at the photography of the scene. Is the photography coherent? If I hit play, let me just get the group, the garden. Let me get the group. If I hit play, I can see that the cousin is slightly darker. And because I see this shot a lot, the first couple of shots of her arriving, they're actually too bright. Why? Because they were shot on a different time of the day. Simple as that. If you have two people talking in, think about Amazon. I did Homecoming. I did Homecoming season 1. There is the two main characters, Julia Roberts and the other kid that I don't remember, Walter, whatever it was, sitting. They don't move. Single camera on her, on him. Perfect lighting. You do the scene look, you apply, you are done. The scene is done. Unless you have a reflection on the sky or the window is too bright, whatever, I'm expecting director of photography to put the light coherently, you're done. In this case, we're outdoor, and of course, outdoor things change. So, which is the most elegant way in Resolve to cluster together shots that were shots at the same time of the day, therefore have carried the same photography? Here in the view menu, you have thumbnail load. It's a twist tango for me. Timeline thumbnail mode. Two modes available. One is record, one is source. What does it mean? In record mode, the thumbnail are presented in the order of which the movie is played. In source mode, they are presented in the order of the original time code of the clip. Most of the time in the set, the time code is set up with the time of the day. Take advantage of that. I cleverly map this one to the A and C button so you can see they switch. So if I go in the other mode, in source mode, and I look in this view, you can see something very amazing. All the shots of the group are shot as a first thing, then all the shot the main actress were shot as a second thing, and we can check the time code. That's exactly what happened. And then all the shots of these actors were shot in later, including those two, sorry. And those two are by themselves. Huh. Can I do then go to the camera angle and make a correction? Of course, I have an angle trim. So we know that this angle is slightly darker than what we need. I go to the trim angle, and just to show you a different way to color when you don't have a panel, what is color? Printer light. Printer light basically do offsets. And I have it on my keyboard. You can see I'm pressing up and down on my keyboard, and I just lighten this up a little bit, 27, 27, and I say this time color ripple to the selected clip. I select the whole angle, copy and paste, done. This angle was too bright, so I'm gonna darken it using again the thing, and it's slightly cooler, so I'm adding, no, that's too much, a little bit of warmth. Color, ripple to the selected clip. We know this angle is the good one, is the hero angle, unless, there is a sun goes out in a shot, or like this one, there is a bit more smoke that we may want to do later. This one seems good. It's probably just a little bit bright. Select all the shot, go to the angle trim, couple of click of darkening, and where is select the clip, put it back, goes the first shot. I color correct the whole scene with you with 5 clicks. This is now in a position that can be played for the director of photography to see if you are even in the bloody ballpark. I talked for 3 hours, but color correcting this one with you, it took me literally 5 minutes. Choose the global trim for the scene, find the camera angle, balance quickly the camera angle, play. And there is also another thing you're seeing. I'm playing at 50 frames a second, even if the actual material is 25, because I want to see if as overall the scene even work. If the scene doesn't work, if the director say I don't like it, you don't want to go to the next stage. And let, for the sake of the discussion, say, oh, the director doesn't like it. You say, you went a little bit too warm. Can you show me a version that it's cooler? Okay. Director of photography has a trim. I go there, I cool it off. Let me cool it off just a lot just to see. Obviously, it's more than what I wish, but copy to the hell group. Hello, did you copy or did not refresh? The timeline seems to be a little bit silly. Yeah, it did. The timeline don't refresh, and that's a bug on version 17. But basically, I copy to the whole group, and I can immediately hit play. We balance the shots, so the photography is balanced. We have a group, we have a look that work for the whole photography. I can bring a scene, trim it, hit play after literally 5 seconds.
Sorry, somebody just commented. I don't know how to deal with how this destroyed my current workflow. That's amazing. People were also commenting about how they're going to pick up working out or taking new jobs or other time intensive things now that they're saving so much time with these little workflow hacks. So maybe we'll get some
Yeah, so I
pottery.
I know.
Bird watching.
Spend more time with the family.
Yeah.
Mark, I'm picking on you again. Instead of spending more time with the family, you, Mark, do more work. And that's incorrect because you will die one day. I know. I'm glad. If he's here, I'm glad.
W is free. Sorry.
So, as you can see, what I'm trying to show you today, it's a methodology that allow you to simplify your workflow. What you want to do when you color correct, let me go back to the driving board. This one free, F5. You don't have infinite amount of time to do a movie. So let's say even Hollywood, you have a drama shot, a drama movie, you have about 80 hours. So basically 2 weeks. Okay. In those 2 weeks, you have to do the full color correction, the full trim, the full VFX blending, having different cooks tell you what you're doing wrong. You kind of have to pace yourself. So imagine a movie, normal movie, 5 reels. What you want to do is divide in, if you can, a movie in the first 5 days. You basically go through and you color correct all the reels. Reel 1, reel 2, reel 3, reel 4, reel 5. Exactly doing what I did right now. Don't spend time to put windows. At the end of first week, you and your director of photography should be on an agreement where every single scene fell. And while you're doing that, you're starting to realize this scene is the most challenging. I need to work more on that. Instead of spending what more people do, they start on reel one, they eat freaking half a week to do reel one. It looks great. Then another half a week to do reel two, and then guess what? You're out of time. Pace yourself. Give yourself a chance to watch the whole movie like normal people will watch the movie. One actually thing that I do when I work for projection, I have a wireless keyboard. I finish to look at reel one. I bring my wireless keyboard. I go sit where a normal people will sit with no GUI, with no monitor, with nothing. And I play from beginning to end. And I have my finger on the M button that will drop a marker for me. If I see something that it doesn't quite feel right, I drop a marker, but I keep playing because the viewer will experience the movie magic in play. Of course, if you stop on a shot, you can trim the shot to death. Of course, if I compare the first shot of the movie with the last shot of the movie, I can see that probably I drifted. But the second shot of the movie will come an hour and a half. At that point, either you already hated the movie or love it. If it's slightly off, it doesn't matter. If the observer cannot see it, it doesn't matter. So the first week, or as soon as you can, as soon as you can reasonably bring the photography in the ballpark with global look, scene look, and offsets, play as many times as you can, as fast as you can. You see the movie more time. Imagine a movie that is 2 hours. If you play in real time, you just lost 2 hours. And every time you review it, you lost 2 hours. If I can play at double speed, and if you can machine cannot just skip frame, I can review the movie twice in those 2 hours. And I can catch the macroscopic errors. It's like peeling an onion. Once you do the global look, then you do the scene
Right.
look, then you do the shot balancing, then you do the shot trim. If the shot is not balanced, you see that. Once the shot is balanced, now you see what you need as a trim. In the second week, or in the second half of your allotted time, I divide that in two as well, where all this time is dedicated to do the primary trims. That is, because I know exactly the 10 scene in the movie that need more help, I hit that first. You don't want to do a beauty shot if you have a scene outdoor with the sun in and out that is uneven balanced. You're wasting your time. The next thing is the rest of the time, you're dealing with VFX, if you have any, do more trimming, play more, whatever is left behind. You tend to leave the smallest things to do at the end, because if you run out of time, you already did everything else. Blah,
Great.
blah, 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 blah.
Does this bring us to HDR?
Yes.
Ooh.
Disclaimer: I don't do HDR like a lot of other people do. And I don't do HDR like a lot of publications recommend you to do it. I need to make the disclaimer now before we go into it, because the way I do HDR, guess what, is using the same photographic principle that we just discussed for the last 3.5 hours. So you have a negative with all the stop of exposure, you got the sweet part of it, the part the director of photography want to use for telling the story. You already extract that. You build a look, and I make a stupid ass curve. The look goes from 0 to near 0, 0-ish nits, to 48 nits of the projector. you need to do a 709 one. Will you change the photography? No. You spend the last month, sometimes months, to build exactly the mapping you wanted for the device. So you remap this one between 0 and 100 nits. Okay? So the S-curve is the same, the photographic spread is the same. Every single decision you took in the last 3 months is still there. And guess what? You just double the light. Shouldn't that be weird? Perhaps at the first 5 minutes. But remember, your eye doesn't work for absolute luminance. It works for ratios. Today, right now, in front of the screen, probably the brightest light is about 300 nits. The image look about normal. If I go outside right now, there's the sun, I can get peaks of 40,000 nits. They still look normal. It doesn't look freaking 20 stop above because the eye adjusts for you. While the eye has a capability of going from near zero to 24 stop of maximum exposure of range, it doesn't do that at the same time. Roughly, you have 12 stop of good exposure where below this one you see black, above this one you see white. And those 12 stop also are not very linear. 10-ish, 11-ish about are linear, and then you have a toe and a shoulder. That's the way we work. If you go from outside to inside, it immediately look dark. After a moment, your eye adjusts. If you go from seeing a projection to seeing a standard dynamic range 100 nits, it feels bright for a moment and then looks normal. Why? Because the photographic stop exposure ratio are the same. If you buy a TV now in the field and you still watch standard dynamic range, guess what? You're probably hitting anything between 200 and 300 nits in standard dynamic range. And I put exactly the same curve. I don't do a trim because I can't. You're getting the same SDR signal. Once you look at it, after a moment, it looks normal. Why? Because the exposure is fucking the same. Sorry, I used a French expression there. So, can we take advantage of that? Of course we can. Why not? Assuming for a second that this is 100 nits with all the stop that we wanted. I think my daughter is behind me. I know it's my brother, it's my son. So let's say 7 stop of exposure, whatever we decide that is good. Sorry, Fabio. Say hi to everybody. Hi. Okay, got the other son. Go. It's so cute. Your tablet is in the other room. It's charging. You want the tablet? So you have 100 nits, exposure, photographic exposure, everything is fine. What if we build a virtual display? Then instead of hitting 100 nits, hits 500. Okay? Absolutely same photographic spread. Nothing more, nothing less. Will it work? Of course it does. Because the ratios are the same. So we can, in theory, just to do something very simple to do HDR, get 100 nits, remap it to a 500 nits in a PQ space, send it out, nobody will complain it because it's working. Now, what we can do also, if you look at toe and a shoulder, we are compressing a bunch of detail here, right? We can rebuild some of that. So in building an HDR, what I call mapping, I will modify the shoulder and potentially the toe of the image of the curve to give me back a tiny bit more of those details. So the cloud get more detail, the explosion get more detail. A lot of HDR publication tell you to do something different. You have the 100 nits and say, oh, keep it exactly as is and just put the highlights in. Okay, now this is your subject, A. The highlights were 3 stop above. Now the highlights are fucking 100 stop above, whatever it is. And the first thing you will do in color correction is bring this down. And what you do, implicitly rebuild the same curve. So instead of doing something that you have to undo as a first thing, why we don't take advantage of it? Map it the display, the theoretical display you're using from 100 nits to whatever nits you think is good for that photography. Add some detail, but don't overpower the subject. Remember, the subject is still there. So the ratio between your highlights and the subject is what you're changing. And then go for it. How do we do this in Resolve? La, 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 la. Okay, of course I cannot change it. Now, of course you will not see it because we don't have an HDR monitor, but just follow the idea. Up to this point, we are at 100 nits, okay? Because I'm color correcting in this case for internet, because we are through internet. So this represent a gamma encoded 100 nits master. We will need the scopes, and we switch the scopes now to nits HDR. Okay. And we forget about the scope for a second. Don't worry about the scope. The first thing we want to do is actually target the display. How you target the display? You put a color space transformation. And the color space is which display I have right now, as I have 709. Which gamma is the right now? 2.4, 2.2 if you are doing internet. Doesn't matter. Details. Whatever target you were doing the master color. What are we targeting? P3D65 at the specification that is S2084. Now, it look and take away the Da Vinci. We don't need that shit. This is a default that it's on, that it shouldn't be on. Bug. So if you look here, the image look like crap because you don't have a proper HDR display, but you see that the photography is between 0 and 100 nits. Okay, nothing changed. If you look at this in a proper HDR monitor, look absolutely identical to the SDR that we just did. No surprise. So what do we do next? Oh, it's a red log. No, this is a Sony, because it's Sony. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Or it doesn't matter. This Sony should not have this look. We can keep it. Why not? So it's a Sony camera, so it passed through the whole look. These represent our photography. The next thing you want to do, like we say, mapping for a virtual device. The virtual device we want to hit, let's say for sake of exercise, is a 500 nit device. So I have a very convenient line here. I use this node number 8, doesn't matter. And I literally just gain up to hit the target. Now, to be mathematically correct, this gain should be done in linear light, not in gamma encoded. But practically, I see very little difference to do it in linear light to gamma encoded. And linear light is because we are literally going from 100 nits of exposure to 500 nits of exposure of direct light out of the emitter to your eye. Linear light is the correct math. However, for all intent and purposes, the difference is so minimal that the observer cannot see it. If the observer cannot see it, reduce complexity. Gain, it's fine. Next thing you want to do, you see the shoulder, you want to recover a little bit of those details. So if this one is the mapping to 500 nits, the other thing is the recover. This guy. This guy, we go down to, you can do highlights, you can use the new HDR, you can use curve, doesn't matter. Let's do something simple. Let's say everything above 0.75, we recover. See what I'm doing? I'm stretching back the shoulder. Therefore, some of the detail that in SDR were compressed, they come back. But also, I'm not overpowering the subject. I'm not adding so many stops of light. Is the shot of somebody against the window about what's outside of the window or about the character inside the window talking? It's about inside the window talking. Who bloody care about the outside? Is a distraction. You want to give a bit more because your highlights, your laser sword, your clouds, sure. But don't overpower your subject. The next node, occasionally, because the black in an HDR display tend to fall off a cliff. Literally, there's a cutoff point where blacks just go down and clips. And they are much thicker than a standard dynamic range, especially if you're in projection. On the bottom, I may or may not choose to recover some of it. And this is literally, do you want it, you don't, whatever you want to do. Most of the time, so this was the recover of the highlights. And this is the recover of the black, or black. Most of the time, I actually don't use it. So let's reopen this one. Let's reset. How do you reset this thing? There. That is it. You just did an entire HDR pass of this piece. It's nothing more simple than that. You bring the whole photography that you just worked 3 months for it, and you go to HDR. If you are building HDR first, you simply build a look that target HDR. That is the look for the HDR. And the entire photography play within that look. Homecoming, The Old Guard, Bliss, all those projects that I had to finish for Netflix in HDR or Amazon, and currently the other 3 things I'm doing, the look has been built in this way because the advantage is that you have 100 nits lookup table you can give on the set, VFX, producer, Netflix itself, and editorial gets up to here, and you know that you are doing a proper mapping of the same photography to HDR. When we sit in, we do that. That's the simplest way to do HDR. And I don't do anything else. It's simple as that. And I know the majority of you are thinking, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm telling you, just try. Open, if you have Netflix, watch The Old Guard in HDR. Watch Amazon in Homecoming in HDR. Watch Bliss in HDR. They look proper because the photographic ratio is correct. And I'm meeting 800-900 nits, and it's brighter than most of the HDR you find around. Yes, who cares? I'm keeping the photographic spread. That's how I do it. Now, this will bring us to the last portion that will take me 15 minutes to destroy. Dolby. How you go from the HDR back to the SDR for the Dolby Pass. And I know I'm going slightly above 4 hours, but please let me do this one because this is another thing that I do differently than most. So this is the problem you're facing with Dolby. And I do more Dolby than HLG, so pardon if I don't talk about HLG. You have 100 nits starting point that everybody saw and love. You transform that elegant to, let's say, 800 nits, keeping the same photographic spread. And now you have to do a Dolby mapping down to, guess what, 100 nits. Now, if you think about for a second, you went from 100 nits to 800 nits with a single transformation. The whole photography follow you. The whole photography is already done in a way that bright and scene are supposed to be brighter, dark and scene are supposed to be darker. Can I find a way to go from the 800 nits down to 100 nits and substantially get exactly the same starting point? That is the Dolby challenge. To do that, you have to do exactly what Dolby tells you not to do. So, if you're willing to get this path, be aware you will be rejected in QC and you have to fight for it. But the substantial of it is, imagine for a second, using this method, single mapping to HDR, that you have 100 year of history of photography. Okay? You have it in your machine. And you go from beginning to end of all this photography, you map it for HDR, and you want to go down to SDR. Can you find a frame, a test frame that represent the photography, the 100 in photography in its essence? Yes, you can. The simplest way to do it, it's actually build a ramp that goes from 0, because sometimes you fade to 0, to white, because guess what? Sometimes you have white, with a 50% gray. That is a very simple test frame that represent every single photography that can ever be built at that particular nit level. Then you analyze that with the Dolby Analyzer. It will give you a minimum, an average, and a max. And what it does resolve, well, what it does Dolby is basically grabbing this that was a 500 nits and find the best mapping down to 100 nits that is slightly as curvish, slightly, but guess what? It's still somehow a ramp. Guess what? Every single ratio you had in 100 nits is maintained. Once you find that, you may want to do a couple of trims. For example, the black feels a little bit thick during this transformation, so I tend to raise them a bit. And sometimes I want to just clip some of those highlights, because in mapping it down, the Dolby math tend to privilege a little bit too much the highlights. So I put, for example, 0.015 on the height, 0.015 on the black to recover the black. So now you have one analysis, one trim. You select those two parameters, you slap it on the whole movie, you are bloody done. That is exactly what Dolby tells you not to do. So if you do that, they will chase your tail. You have to absolutely explain why you're doing that. This is to maintain the photographic ratio intended from the photography. And it works because I went from standard dynamic range or whatever to high dynamic range with a single transformation. If you have multiple transformation, it doesn't work. Now, what's the thing is they tell you, oh, analyze the whole thing and you analyze single shots and then you trim it. Okay, great. Let's see what the analysis does. So you have, let's start with the one scene, the classic scene. You have a table, you have one person here, pardon, the stick figure, you have a person here, you have a window, and you have here a wall. Wall, window. The director of photography already put lights to make the two subject where he wants in the exposure time. However, if you look at one shot, you have the window behind, so the average of this shot is perhaps number 700 or 70%, yeah, 70%. The average of the other guy against a dark background is 300 or 30%, 70-30. What Dolby's tried to do is brighten this shot and darken this shot because of the analysis telling to do so. But that's not what you want. You already have established the ratio between these two persons. You want one side of the screen to be bloody darker and one side to be bloody brighter. Keep that. Dolby tried to help you, and in trying to help you, it actually undo the photography. And the next thing you're doing is trimming to try to bring this one down, that one up. So
Right.
in Resolve, what you can do, even if you don't have the Dolby license, is say, I have a scene, I can analyze the whole scene, find the minimum, max, and average, and apply to the whole scene. That is a much smarter choice because the whole scene will maintain those brighter versus darker. Okay, you solve the problem for a scene. But this scene was done at the wall in Game of Thrones with a bunch of snow. So the average of the scene is really bright, and this scene is done in a cave, is very dark. And now you have to trim this scene that is too bright and Dolby tame it down with this scene that was dark, and you break the photography per scene. So should I get the whole movie in average? Yes, you should do that. Imagine for a second 1917, the movie. Conceptually speaking, photographically speaking, executionally and script, it's one shot. From beginning to end, it's one shot. In the Dolby point of view, one shot need to be analyze and blend. And in that shot, you have bright exterior, bright interior, dark exterior, full night, full explosion. You have everything. The entire photography of the movie is in one shot. You analyze it, you put one analysis, one trim, you're done, and it works. So if it worked for 1917, work for every other effing movie out there in the wild. That's exactly what Dolby tells you not to do. If you want to follow this one, like I say, be prepared to have master QC rejecting because you have too many shots with the same analysis. And your answer is, I'm maintaining the photographic intent. That is about it. And I know what I say right now goes against every single thing that people ever teach about HDR. So I apologize about that, but that's how I do it.
So thanks for coming to my masterclass. That's pretty amazing. Walter, we have a bunch of questions. We want to just try and get some to you with, a little bit more of your time. You've been very generous. So
of course, like I say, I'm willing, if you guys want to stay a little bit longer, I'm willing to give you another hour of question and answer until my wife can hear and just start to spoon me.
Right, exactly. So somebody had asked here, what are the render settings for HDR master renders? Is that dependent on your deliverable?
Yes. So the basic,
do you have to put any? Yeah, go ahead.
The basic idea is at the moment, and I'm talking about Dolby. So again, HLG may be slightly different. Let me add one more thingy out of 5 white. Thank you. So at the moment for Dolby, and this is true for Netflix, Amazon, Hulu is doing the same, at least the production I'm seeing right now. They're asking for P3D65 color volume within a 2020 container. That means that even if the container is 2020, you have to limit your gamut at P3, okay?
Got it.
And the ST2084 is also called PQ. That's the actual gamut curve. Like instead of saying gamma, we call it PQ. So currently, my understanding is we generate a P3D65 PQ master delivered within 2020 container. That is the current specification. The other thing that I don't know how much strict they are, Netflix at this point. Netflix demanded, it's funny enough, a single lookup table / transformation / look on top of everything. So the funny thing is that everything I do with the look in HDR is exactly what Netflix was demanding for 4 or 5 years. I don't even know if they demand that or not. They may not. They may have now relaxed that constraint, but it still works. So why not?
Right. Somebody else, let me see here. Somebody asked, if you're a purist and you want to do the mapping from 100 to 1,000 nits, let's say, with the best way possible, what would you suggest? That's my main artistic problem with HDR. I don't want the highs to be 5 stops above the talent. I think you had kind of addressed that with your ratios.
Oh, yeah, just simple. I'm sorry, I didn't share the screen when I was talking about the other one. Simple, get the 100 nits, gain it up until in HDR you reach the nits level you want it, restore slightly more of the highlights, you're good. Fathom, there is a documentary that is coming up in a few weeks in Apple TV. They shot with an Alexa. The director of photography / director, it's a documentary, shot with an Alexa bot in Alaska and Papua New Guinea. So no light condition, like whatever light condition is there is there. The Alexa become effectively your tool to get the photography right. You just try to expose at 18% gray with an exposimeter. It's roughly this measure it will go. We did the initial pass at 1,000 nits because I had to work on a Sony X300 monitor, knowing that when I had the day of trim inside of a pulsar and I could reach 2000 nits, I can just scale it. I scale it, we watch that, we did the trim pass for 100 nits, 600, and 1000 nits on the Dolby XML, we are done. If you ever have a 2000 nits monitor or TV, watch that at 2000 nits. It's absolutely gorgeous. And even if a documentary, I use the same strategy. Which is the best way to bring the entire photography to 2000 nits, knowing the challenges of shooting in the wild. The director of photography did his best to nail the exposure of the subject, and I know I need only 4 stop above, 3 stop below, I'm done.
Somebody here is asking, do you think it's a good time now in 2021 to invest in an HDR reference monitor? Couple questions about that in the chat. The benefits of having an SDR and an HDR reference monitor, and do you think it's a worthwhile investment?
Yes, however, it's very difficult to find an HDR monitor on a price range that doesn't break the bank. So
Right.
I'm actually looking for something for home because we are doing a lot of in-home work from company 3. We're trying to set up more of a remote grading, and I can do standard dynamic range. I have the tool for that. HDR is difficult, and company 3 doesn't have hundreds of X300. They cost 30 grand each to give every colorist, so we need to find an elegant way. Flanders Scientific has monitors. Sony actually has, let me reshare the screen. If I can find, I'm not going to find it. Sony has a couple of nice 24 inches or 17 inches for respectively something like 10 grand and 7 grand.
Mm-hmm.
I know LG has something. Can I use a domestic LG to do HDR? Yes. One, if you can calibrate it close enough, and two, if you accept the tolerance of it. You can. Like I was saying earlier, can I use a normal computer monitor to color my piece? Of course you can. But the closer you are to the tolerance, the more people will see the intended photography. If you have a tool, your primary display, that deviate from the standard, more people will see of the different image.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the more precision you have, the better it is.
There's a couple questions here about the kind of like procedural process of working as a colorist. Within company 3, do you guys have, besides the actual colorist role, do you have other people that are like assistant colorists or that are prepping stuff for you? Can you describe kind of what that's like?
Okay, so it depends. In company 3, there are colorists that are more busy, so they rely on trusted assistant colorists to do, for example, the balancing pass. I have, in one side, I really like what I'm doing, so I like to serve the photography from beginning to end, and I'm not that busy that I have to hand off some of the work to an assist. So usually the way I work, for example, for feature, Chris is my online editor. He's amazing. He prepared everything for me. Color tries to be effect if I have to copy color to a VFX, and I do everything else. So 2 main people is usually the setup I like. I know there are, Sonnenfeld is so busy that there is no possible way he can do everything. So he has a couple of very trusted colorists that work for him for 8 years now. So he set up the main, like I say, you set up the main look of the scene. The matching of the scene is very technical. If you have somebody that knows what he's doing, matching of a scene doesn't imply, much creativity. It's seeing the difference between the shot, seeing the difference between the photography, make it flow. So there are people that use colorist assist. I don't. Whatever you want to do. So I mean, that is how much work you have, how you like to work.
Right. And then how much time do you normally have with clients in a suite? Like if you're working with a director or DOP, I know you've talked about like the planning process to develop the look over months, but like, let's say you're doing a project and you're bringing them in and they have comments on certain shots. Like what's that process like depending on the project you're working on?
So the basic idea, if we can develop a look before the shoot, it's great.
Hmm.
Star Wars or Nobody or Bliss. We were able to do that ahead of time. Other show like Green Book, they went to shoot. They use a normal Alexa lookup table as a base. So the photographic spread was the one of an Alexa using the Alexa representation. And when it came to me, just we modify slightly that look. We introduce some of the filmic element that we like, elation grain. We change slightly the feeling of the highlights, the feeling of the lowlights, whatever. Um, so you may have some ahead of time. Sometimes you don't. The show that I'm showing to you, the shorts that I'm showing to you, they come to me after the fact. So why not? Um, the next thing to consider is that usually director of photography will sit with you for the most part. If if you get paid because everybody has to eat, he will sit with you for the whole process. Sometimes they can't, so they may sit with you one day and then go away and then come back. So what you want to do, um, I'm not sharing the screen. What you want to do, let's say that you have a director of photography that has 3 day free. You want to sit with him the first day. The first day, you go through every scene, you hit the hero shot, and you do the scene trim. So we know that the starting point of each scene is the one that it should be. Then he goes away, and you do all the technical matching that you have to do. When you come back after 2 3 days, you can play the movie in the ballpark. And at that point, if he likes it, you're done, you move to the next phase. If he doesn't, he has the trim node for him. The Hail Mary pass node that I showed you earlier has the function of, at the back end of the process, the director come in, or the producer, or the girlfriend of somebody important and say, why we don't make everything brighter? And you can do that. Now, there was one trim node that I did not describe, so let me share for a second that again. And this is part of keeping the workflow elegant. So let's imagine this, what I'm doing right now for Queen Sugar. Queen Sugar was shot in Louisiana, came to me. The director of photography is still shooting the next episode, so I don't have it with me. So what I do is exactly what we described right now. I do the scene, I do my base. Because it's the 5th season, I know which kind of little trim he may need, and I put it. Then the director of photography come in remotely, and I play, and he asks me to do some trim on certain shots. If I do it here, I may break his. Those one are more global one, so I park myself on this node and I do the trim just for the shot. So I don't break any of the little trimming and I can still do a session. And what he asked me to do very often, can you show me a before and after? If you start to put it here, it becomes difficult to do a before and after. If you have it here, you just mute the shot and you show before and after. Done. Let me just mute this one so we can actually do an example. So let's say that, oh, can you make it warmer? There. Can you show before and after? There. Done. So that node is for the interactive session. If the director of photography cannot be with you from the beginning and you go down to an interactive session, you have a place that it's clean. It will not break any of the things you do. It will not break any of the scene level things, and you can trim little shot here and there. So again, it's try to give you chances to elegantly solve problem. Another thing that I didn't mention that I want to mention right now, complexity. Can I add complexity to node structure? Yes, but you may break the node structure. So what you want to do, you want to transform one of the node as a compound node. So let me just add 2 node here for the sake of exercise. We do a compound node. Bloop. I'm gonna get this one. Show the node tree. Where is the show the node tree? Show the node tree. There you are. And just do this one. Usually I have a compound node already generated. So this one I'm just generating with you. So that is a compound node. So imagine we are in the case of, I need to pull 10 different keys from the same shots. I can go inside the compound node, and now I can pull how many key I want it. I can make this one as complex as I want it. Like, blah, 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 blah. I don't really care because the very complex color I have to do on that single shot. And when I get out of it, guess what? It's encapsulated. Hide the complexity. If the next node need the same thing, display node graph, go here, grab it, drag it, done, move on. You encapsulate in one single container all the complexity that particular shot need. You go to the next shot. You don't have to chase down which shot, which trim you use. You have it. It's there. You grab it. Can I see without it? Sure. You hide it. So if you use different color tools, find which is the way you can hide complexity. When you're there with a client, ask you a bunch of changes, you must not think about where to put it. Because if you do things too complex, later on, you cannot either reproduce for the next shot or you cannot elegantly undo them.
That's really good insight. Thank you. Let's see. Do you isolate skin tones with a key and adjust them? Is that how you normally work with skin tones, or do you normally?
Never. No. Because my first correction is to make the subject look right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's, think about it. The director of photography light a subject. A subject tell the story. Mm-hmm. The camera was pointed at a subject and captured that on the best light. Mm-hmm. The only thing I do is, again, balance the subject where it should be. If the background is off, I invite you to do something. It's an experiment. Whoever of you watch Dunkirk, go and watch it again. Watch just the dogfight with the planes, okay? Just that scene. Look at the dogfight. When you're done, watch it again, and now force yourself to not look at the plane. Look at the background. It's all over the bloody place because it was shot through several days. The clouds are all over, the sun is all over the bloody place. The surface of the water is different shot to shot. Who cares? That's not the story. The story is not about the cloud. The story is about the two planes fighting. Make the subject look great. Then if you have time, you deal with the cloud in the background. As simple as that.
Right. Well, I'm sure there are devastated YouTubers right now who are just crying in their pillows about keying videos. Okay.
Let me answer. I'm just looking at something. Jeffrey say, if my dynamic and noise reducer node where you would animate keyframe for your brightness, yes. Because the idea is, even in a shot, I found, let's say you have the example I was saying, the indoor to outdoor. One of the two positions is the hero position, sometimes both, or one of the two, the hero position. So I tend to go there, balance the shot for that, then put a keyframe in the other side to do the second half of the shot, or the sun went away at one point. And I try to hide those changes with camera movement. That's a funny thing. If you have a shot that is static and you try to do a change, you will see it. There is nothing you can do, you will see it. But what I'm trying to do is, if there is a camera movement there, try to hide it within the camera movement. Try to mimic what the director of photography will do. Think about it. He has on a Steadicam, he has a control for the iris. The iris is in one position, the Steadicam pull back, walk following the character outside, and he's riding the stop going outside. If you have to do it in Resolve, mimic the same thing because it feels natural. That's what will do, the director of photography will do. And that's what your eye will do. You will have a moment where the brightness set in and then adjust because your eye adjusts. Take advantage of the limitation of the eye to hide the correction in it. They feel natural. You don't see them.
There was a question here. I think it ties into what we did earlier when you transformed that Sony camera to the Alexa space.
Yeah.
It says, how would you manage the workflow with different cameras that need different color space transformations? Would you do it by camera group?
Yes.
Or, for each color space, and then do another for, group for the scenes?
Yeah, so there are different methodology. If you have a lot of camera, it can be challenging, but the basic idea is, at least at Company 3, we build DCTLs, a fancy way to say math, to transform the color space of the camera to one to another. Mm-hmm. If you don't have the power of Company 3, you can always get DCTL from, I think, Yuan Melara. No, who is the guy? There is somebody that built some of those DCTLs, and those DCTLs are based on the white paper, literally gamma transform gamma to go from one to another. Or you can use Resolve. Resolve allow you to use a color space transform. You can put it at the first node to put camera together. Or you can use the color space transform to dump a lookup table that does that transformation for you. I mean, each method has advantage or disadvantage, but the basic idea is I like to bring every single camera to a common color space, then hit the color space look.
Right.
Now, let me do one more digression. Do you like ACES? Do you want to use ACES? Use ACES. That's not a problem. But what I want to show you is a different thing. Let me reset all this mofo from beginning to end. So now the node space, the node structure is the same, doesn't matter. Let's clear all this stuff. Let's put a bunch of nodes. Let's go at the end. Let's get Sony because this camera is Sony. I hope I share the screen, otherwise I'm just talking my ass off.
Yeah, we see it.
Good. Okay, I forget something. So let's say if you use Resolve Color Transformation or Resolve Color Management or Base Light Management or whatever management system you decide to use, the manufacturer will do a transformation for you. And the question is that transformation good? I don't know. Let's check. 709, 2.4. Where is Gamma 2.4? I lost it. 2.4. Okay, so this is Sony 2709. That is the same transformation that will be used roughly. I don't need this guy. Roughly inside Resolve Color Management. And my question to you is, does that look even remotely close to an S-curve? The whole photographic principle we spend now 4 hours, 24 minutes, and 39 seconds talk about. Now it does not. So the first thing you will do if you use a color space management is actually to shape that, to try to build an S-curve that maintain the photographic intent. So do you want to use color space management because it gives you an image that somehow look normal? Sure. Does that image look good? I don't know. Perhaps not. And if you do the same thing with ACES, I think there is also an extra transformation here going on. There's an extra transformation that I'm not seeing. No, there isn't. Okay, everything is fine. If the image looks very bright. I'm just not used to use this one, so I don't know, it looks wrong to me. So do you want to use a starting point? Yes, but the next thing you do, you are now shaping, fighting that transformation just to get the photography out. That's why I prefer to build my own look. And I show you two methods. They are perfectly valid. You want to use an array lookup table as starting point? Please do. Do you want to use a film lookup table as starting point? Please do. Marry the photography, marry the color space to the lookup table. It's a perfectly valid starting point. Now, I downloaded, I've been asked, or somebody give it to me, lookup table that represent a bunch of movies, you know, The Look, Mad Max, or Dunkirk, or this or that, or this or that.
Right.
And first of all, they don't tell you which color space in input and output they are. And I dig a little bit, and correctly, the idea is that you need to have a 709 input and a 709 output, and a give a transform. And one of the lookup table caught my eye. It's called The Devil's Reject. Let me talk about that. I did the fucker movie, okay? I know what the Devil Reject look like. That lookup table look absolutely fucking nothing like the movie. So you're getting something that just because it's called the Devil Reject doesn't mean it looks like a Devil Reject. It doesn't, by a mile and a half. Now, do your research. How the Devil Reject was done. Was done using a film stock in 2005. Do we have a representation of the film stock available close enough? Yes, Resolve has film stock. add grain, add elation. That's your starting point. The rest is the photography.
Right.
Don't get bumbleized and buy a random lot just because somebody told you look like Joker. It
There,
doesn't.
there was a question, because you've kind of talked about the photography and the image pipeline a little bit. There was a question about general knowledge and what books you might recommend for
Yes.
people to kind of help, kind of get a base of technical understanding.
Yes, just give me a second. Okay, let's put this one here. Let me share so you see what I'm seeing. Where is the sharing button? So I will give to tech this document. That's a document that I'm collecting from a lot of different places. Forum, my personal experience, and this talk about both technical, artistic, books, resources, and I keep updating it. So I will give you a link when the class is done.
Great.
I will give you a link that anybody can access. And it really depends how much in depth you want to go. Some of
Right.
them are very simple, show you how to do basic looks and resolve. Some of them show you more about in-depth techniques. Some of them are more abstract, like we were
Sure.
saying, the culture. When we have a color, what the color represent as a social cultural idea. Let me
Right.
give you a funny story. So they did an experiment. It's a podcast that talk about how brain react to color. It's available as a podcast. It's a university lessons, but that doesn't matter. They're talking about the color blue. The color blue is the perfect color to put you asleep. It pacifies you.
Mm-hmm.
With one exception, they run the test of blue versus neutral color, blue versus other color on a bunch of places. And suddenly enough, in Italy, there was a variation of the reaction of the people to that specific blue color, specifically male. And they try to understand why the Italian population get excited to that specific color instead of to fall asleep at that specific color, because the color they choose was very close to the soccer national team Azzurri. So in the back of the mind of the Italian male, the soccer instant kick in. That's a fun experiment. It's one of those things just amazing. The other
That's awesome.
experiment that I want you guys to do with your kids, if you have it, find Jello that is transparent. Okay, it doesn't have any taste, transparent. Then get food coloring and ask your kids to choose 4 or 5 coloring and make different little Jello, different color. Put it in the fridge, go to sleep. The day after, ask your mom, your kids, whatever, to do 2 things. One, taste the Jello or give the Jello to somebody that actually didn't know that you're doing that, and ask them which flavor the Jello is. It is actually nil, but the color of it will suggest to you a taste. It's freaking amazing. If you have a red juicy one, you start to talk about strawberries.
Right.
If it's a blue one, because there are very little blue color in nature, you will find that nauseating.
Mm-hmm.
If it's green, it does feel like, a lemon. The gel has no color. Then you redo the experiment with that person blindfolded and say, well, they taste like nothing. Then do it blindfolded and tell, you are tasting a red Jello. They will tell you again that has a color. They will not believe they don't have a color. It's amazing how color change perception. So keep that in mind. In some of the books and some of the podcasts,
Talk about theory and
yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, let's see.
Sorry, Filippo. Yes, 2006 World Cup triggered.
Any
I have one anonymous attendee that say, I've incorporated any of the new Resolve DaVinci 17 tools. I'm actually liking the color warper. I find it easier to slightly do different color. For example, on the leaf, instead of trying to pick a key and try to stare the key where I want it, I find it easier to just pick a point and gently tug it. It breaks the image a lot less. So I'm liking that new tool quite a lot.
There was a question that we had from Mike Lollip. He says, as a music video maker, how can I export videos and retain the same level of exposure and contrast? This happens to change as soon as it gets uploaded to YouTube Vimeo. So any strategies on your part, to mitigate?
If you believe in God, you can pray. There is no strategy. I mean,
right.
Let me give an example. A TV manufacturer that will remain nameless talked with a very important industry manufacturer that will remain nameless. They were talking about making a standard for viewing, I think it was HDR. The TV manufacturer told the other manufacturer a simple truth. If every TV look exactly the same, why they buy my TV? At a premium. So you are fighting an impossible task. Every single TV manufacturer, every single bloody thing out there will try to put the special sauce so they can sell at a premium their TV. I wish there is a button that sets everything to zero. There isn't. So you, assuming that your color chain is correct, the best thing you do is target the specification. And then hoping that the operative system of your Mac or PC doesn't screw up when it comes back from YouTube. There is really nothing you can do. I mean, there are River or virtual ink that has been wasted answered that question, why does it look the same? Because they actually don't want to.
Right.
And it's such a mess right there that it's really difficult. So do the best you can, hope for the best.
Well, Walter, any closing thoughts you might have for the team, for the group? Anything you haven't shared with us that you'd like to share as a...
So going back to write a book that I started this chapter of our life together with, you learn how to write, you learn how to read. That's learning your tools. Being Resolve, being Lumetri, being Photoshop, doesn't really matter the tool. You need to know your tools before you go to the next step. But writing a book, the tool is not really fundamental. Fundamental is what you do with it. Each one of us has literally, can you see this? Yeah, literally a $1 pen. I cannot write like Stephen King, even if I have a pen. The fact that all of you can now get Resolve for free doesn't make you a colorist. Experience make you a colorist. A lot of time, people ask me, what's your secret? My secret is very simple. Respect the original photography. Find the original photography. That's my secret. Help your DP to succeed. Of course, if the photography need help, you need to know how to do it. But you should not aggressively change the photography if you don't even know what the director of photography wants. That's pretty much my secret. What I show you today, building a strong look, make the scene work within the look, match to the hero shot, that's what I do every single day. I don't suddenly put hundreds of nodes and put a shot before and after on Judge My Grade. Hey, look how much good I am. You don't even know what was the discussion before the shot. If I show you something I'm doing right now that I cannot show you, that I'm trying to simulate 16 millimeter that was captured in 1980, that was abandoned in a garage that we developed today that is completely faded, and I put that in my color grade, you're telling me I'm an idiot because you don't have the context. When you see that in the context of simulating old footage, looks amazing. So context is important. Where the context come from? From your director of photography, from the story, from the script, from whoever else worked in the movie. It's not your movie.
Exactly. Well, Walter, a few people have asked throughout the actual class that whether or not this will be available to them. It will be. We'll be able to email you guys the accessible link so you guys can rewatch this. There's a lot of material, a lot of information here. Even just quick little, like I've seen some people within the chat say, "Oh, what did he click? How did he get to this window to present?" Like even just things that you're just doing on autopilot that make the navigation of the software so smooth and seamless. Like those little moments are worth rewatching as well.
Yeah, and absolutely. The idea is that I didn't want to spend too much time showing you, hey, pressing this
Right.
button.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
the idea is that you may not even use resolve, you may use baselines or another one. It's a,
Right.
what I want to focus about is why you press the button. That's more important than which button you press. Of course, you need to know which button you press.
Right.
Why you do it is more important.
Right. That's very good. Well, I think just on behalf of everybody who's attended and everybody who's gotten a chance to listen to you be exceptional, we just want to say thank you for your time. You've been incredibly generous. The classes, I'm sure, really excited about some of the stuff that you've taught them. If you guys are interested in learning a little bit more on a granular level how to push buttons and how to get familiar with resolve, obviously tac resolve training has an incredible course that you can dig through and kind of get familiar and gain some experience with those things. But as far as the big picture, Walter, you've really kind of added a lot of value to all of our lives and to all of our careers, and I'm sure our clients will be happier. So we just want to say thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for
And
letting me do it. By the way, I love to do this kind of stuff.
oh, it's wonderful. I'm sure we'll have you back again. I mean, this is the second time we've had a chance to talk, so I'm excited. I feel like a more competent colorist just watching you work. So thank you so much. It was a privilege, and thank you everybody in the group. If you have any questions, feel free to email those to the team. And as soon as we have the finished video, we'll just send it over to you guys for you to rewatch and enjoy and try and get more out of it. So
Yeah, and I apologize. I mean, I see a lot of questions that I wish I had a chance to answer, but we simply run out of time. That's it. But so
right.
I try to incorporate while I was talking, I was glancing and try to incorporate some of those questions in the speech
Sure.
itself.
Yeah.
The white paper, you can get it from us. Actually, I'm in the little package. I have the white paper for Sony, Alexa, and Red.
Red.
So you at least get those. I could not get my hand on a Canon one, nor a Blackmagic, and my fault. Yeah, you can ask directly. Say, hey, do you have a white paper for this camera? And they will give it to you.
Most times the manufacturers will have those available, but we'll try and assemble all those assets, including that document with those books, and try and make those shareable as well. So, all right, everybody, thank you so much for joining. We're really glad you're able to be here, and if you enjoyed it, please let us know on social media, tag us, and share your experience, and we'll see you at the next one. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Ciao.